You're listening to The Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. North to south, coast to coast, around the world, this is the Wells Report. Good morning, I'm John David Wells. Today is April 16th, year of our Lord 2024. What do we do on this broadcast? We report the news, honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We de-propagandize the mainstream media. We do make commentary. Commentary is not news. Commentary is opinion. Differentiating between news and opinion is essential in all news coverage, not just on this broadcast. In fact, if you're watching a news platform of any kind and they don't differentiate between opinion and news, you're watching propaganda. That's not what you get here. We differentiate between news and opinion. By the way, speaking of opinion, hey, you're perfectly welcome to share yours either on the chat room, on all the platforms that you're watching this on, or you can give us a call, 817-379-2172. The world is continuing to watch the Israeli-Iran conflict that is going on. There are pieces of analysis, news analysis, etc., that are coming through that illuminate just exactly where the state of play in this particular conflict is. I just received this from a United States intel source, and it is it's in the open, it's in the public domain. So this is not anything that's close to being classified. But this came out today. Iran is reportedly getting a terrifying arsenal from Russia, including anti-aircraft launchers and fighter jets, is threatening to fire weapons it has never used before against Israel in what is called a severe, extensive, and painful response to the slightest action from Israel. This, by the way, is differentiated between what would be a measured response by Israel to Iran, and now Iran is saying the slightest response, the slightest action from Israel. Ibol Fazi Amoué, who is a spokesperson for the Iranian Parliament National Security Committee, told a local news station that the Islamic Republic will, quote, confront any Israeli aggression and respond to it. We are ready to use weapons we have not used before, that official told Al Madain News. We have plans for all scenarios. We call on the Zionists to act rationally. Separately, Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi warned Israel that if it takes the slightest action, it will face a severe, extensive, and painful response. The blind support of some Western countries to the Zionist regime is the cause of tension in the region. We will respond with a massive, broad, and painful manner to the slightest action targeting Iranian interests. The threats come after years of the international community worrying about Iran's nuclear capability. The Islamic Republic has several nuclear research sites, 2 uranium mines, a research reactor, and 3 uranium enrichment plants, according to the London Daily Mail. In November of 2023, the International Atomic Energy Agency reported that Tehran's uranium stockpile was more than 20 times larger than the limit agreed upon under the Obama-era Iran nuclear deal. By December, the United Nations agency warned that Iran had enriched uranium up to 60% purity, which is close to weapons grade. It said it has enough enriched uranium to build 3 nuclear weapons. The National Union for Democracy in Iran also wrote in a report earlier this month that its stockpile of enriched uranium coupled with its centrifuge capacity are enough to make 7 nuclear weapons in just 1 month. Iran is also getting weapons from Russia, including anti-aircraft launchers and drones, according to the Washington Post. It has vowed to support Iran with air defense technology and advanced fighter jets, as well as technical support for its spy satellites. Further agreements between the two countries may also include efforts to rebuild Iran's air force, which is made up of rebuilt Soviet and U.S. jets from before 1979, as well as efforts to increase Iran's supply of spy satellites and help it build more rockets, according to the London Daily Mail. Also, coming out of Fox News today, with all eyes focused on a brewing high-intensity war between Israel and the Islamic Republic of Iran, the state of Tehran's illicit nuclear weapons program has come under the microscope. Iran's sprawling aerial attack with over 300 suicide drones and missiles on Israel raised pressing new questions about the Islamic Republic's capacity to fire a nuclear weapon at the Jewish state. For Israel, the country's former prime minister, Ariel Sharon, said Iran with an atomic weapon would mean a nuclear holocaust for the Jewish state. Over the weekend, after rejecting calls the Biden administration was too soft on Iran, the White House National Security Communications spokesperson John Kirby told Fox News' Shannon Bream that, quote, Iran is so much dramatically closer to a potential nuclear weapon capability than they were before Mr. Trump was elected. This, of course, is a veiled reference to President Trump taking the United States out of the Iran nuclear deal, which, in President Trump's opinion, was accelerating nuclear weapons capability for the Islamic Republic, as opposed to trying to curtail it. This is something that is being used as a political football, and it's painful to watch. It is painful to watch the Biden administration trying to throw all things at the political opponent that they fear the most, which is Donald Trump. And it's inexcusable, really, because the president of the United States is the commander-in-chief of American forces. He is in command. He is responsible for all this. What he needs to do is he needs to say, regarding your nuclear weapons, Iran, don't. But red lines don't seem to mean much. Don't seem to mean much from the United States to the Middle East. They've been set aside time and time again, which only emboldens what I'm looking at as perhaps the opening shots of World War III. I don't understand how it could be anything else. I look at this and say, what are these guys doing? They really wouldn't touch off an all-out shooting war between Israel and Iran simply to create chaos before the 2024 election, would they? They really wouldn't do that, would they? Food for thought. If you have an opinion on that, give me a call. 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. David Albright is a physicist. He's the founder and president of the Institute for Science and International Security in Washington, D.C. He spoke to Fox News and said, quote, Iran would need a year or more to build a semi-reliable warhead for a ballistic missile and about 2 years to reconstitute the Ahmad plan to serially produce reliable warheads for ballistic missiles, i.e., have a fully developed nuclear weapons production complex. The Iranian regime has pursued atomic weapons, codenamed the Ahmad Plan, from the late 1990s to early 2003. In February, Reuters exclusively reported that Iran had enriched uranium far beyond its need for commercial nuclear use. The IAEA chief, Rafael Grossi, told Reuters that while the pace of uranium enrichment has slowed slightly since the end of last year, Iran was still enriching at an elevated rate, around 7 kilograms of weapons-grade uranium, or close to weapons-grade uranium, per month. They're talking about a 60% purity. Commenting on the presidential blame game, Albright said neither Trump nor Biden did well dealing with the nuclear weapons program. Biden has done worse due to his policy of avoidance and his fear of taking any steps that could create a crisis. In other words, appeasement. This risk-averse strategy has utterly failed to stop Iran's progress on its nuclear program and has left the West far weaker to fashion a policy to stop Iran's progress, either diplomatically or militarily. Albright warned that Iran can make a crude nuclear explosive in about 6 months, able to be tested underground or delivered by truck, ship, or cargo plane. This accomplishment would be enough to establish Iran as a nuclear weapons power. The simple case of this matter is that there are two ways to acquire nuclear weapons. You can either try to develop them yourself, or you can try to purchase them on the nuclear weapons market, which is something that Saudi Arabia is talking about doing or possibly has already done. In other words, proliferation of nuclear weapons in the Middle East is disastrous. It is disastrous and the inexorable result of what has been failed Middle East policy throughout the decades by virtually everyone in the world not in the Middle East, including the United States. I said on this broadcast at the outset of the Iraq War that we should have stayed there. We should have stayed in Iraq, indeed made it a U.S. territory right there in the middle of the Middle East. But we didn't do that. For all intents and purposes, after the Second World War, that is exactly what Allied powers did in both Japan and Germany. After decades, they became some of our strongest allies. There's no reason to believe that that strategy wouldn't work again. But yet we have decided to get out of the way of Iraq, in the case of Iraq, a destroyed country, leaving it to political chaos, which is where we find that nation now, when we could have not done it. There have been other bad decisions. The Iran nuclear deal was perhaps one of the most insidious. Under the guise of trying to limit the possibility of an Iranian nuclear weapon, it did nothing more but facilitate that very end. When it comes to nuclear weapons, the first nuclear weapon dropped by any power on any other was a uranium bomb. The isotope that is unstable enough to be able to create a runaway nuclear reaction, which creates a nuclear explosion, was the little boy bomb dropped on Hiroshima. It was never tested. The physicists, mathematicians, designers, engineers knew it would work. That technology has been available in the public domain for 70 years. It doesn't take a whole lot of imagination to realize that same or similar design could be created by Iran virtually at will. What needs to be understood as well is that even though those explosions, both the Hiroshima weapon and the Nagasaki weapon, which was of a different design using plutonium, those particular bombs were extremely inefficient and yet were good enough to destroy two cities. And so the possibility that Iran would create a nuclear weapon that was functional is not out of the realm of possibility. Considering the rhetoric coming out of Iran, it could be all but certain. There are other stories on this. The red line that I discussed was also reported on by Fox News. What happens if Israel does nothing after the Iranian fusillade that happened Saturday night over the weekend? President Biden told Iran, don't. Iran did. Team Biden then quickly turned to restraining Israel from responding. Take the win, the president is reported to have counseled Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It's a good thing that Israel, with the help of the U.S., the UK, France, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia, saw fit to jump into this particular conflict and fended off the worst result. But Iran escalated way beyond what it ever has hitherto dared to do. President Biden urged Israel to stand down. And that, according to the writer of this article, is astonishing. The article, by the way, is an opinion piece by Hugh Hewitt. Hugh Hewitt is pointing out that red lines mean nothing, certainly coming from the United States of America. That is a weak America. Ronald Reagan famously said, of all the conflicts I've seen in my lifetime, none came because the United States was too strong. That is not where we find ourselves today. We'll be back with more on the Wells Report in just a moment. Please stay where you are.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost.
Nobody wants to get ripped off, broken into, or robbed, but nobody wants to pay a lot of money to have their home protected either. I've got an offer to tell you about to provide home security for your home for less than $1 a day. For real, with no installation or equipment charges. And this is from a company rated #1 by a leading consumer research company. According to the facts, most of you won't even call unless there's a burglary in your neighborhood or something bad happened. So let's give you a reason. Save money. For less than $1 a day with no other costs, you can get your home secured. Plus, get a lifetime equipment replacement warranty. You need protection for your home. Call the Home Security Hotline right now.
Get your home secured for less than $1 a day, and every caller today immediately qualifies for free installation. Call now.
Call 877-275-0973. 877-275-0973. That's 877-275-0973.
Good morning. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. We are bringing you the latest on the Iranian-Israeli conflict. And that conflict is, without doubt, some of the most frightening things that the human existence has had to deal with since World War II. General Jack Keane is a Fox News contributor. He was on Fox News yesterday discussing this very scenario.
So that was early Sunday morning in Israel, also in Jordan, some other areas too. What defends Israel today is a complex system. One of those systems is called Iron Dome. We just want to give you an idea a little bit about how this works, okay? This is the Iron Dome. There are others now, but we just want to give you an example here. Enemy rockets are fired here. That's point number one. Then the radar system on behalf of the Israelis detects that rocket and tracks it. Now, the third part is very important, okay? This control system estimates the impact point. The system is designed that if you fire a missile into Israel and it's determined to land in the desert, let's say, or maybe even into the sea, they will not go, in most cases, they will not go after that missile. They'll just let it land harmlessly. But if it's threatening a population center, this launcher fires the missile to intercept, and that missile explodes near it and destroys it. And they were very successful on Saturday night, Sunday morning. Jack Keen's with me now. And sir, good morning to you. I thought you made a number of interesting points. I just want to make one here, okay? Think about Hezbollah in Lebanon. Think about Hamas. Think about the Houthis in Yemen. What are they thinking today after Iran's raid really was weak?
Well, they have to be stunned, frankly, because they have been urging Iran to get more involved in what they are doing. They wanted more direct assistance from Iran, and they finally got it. But what happened is it was historic, as you mentioned previously, because Iran has never invaded Israel before or fired on them, consequentially. But the reality is it was an overwhelming defeat for Iran and humiliation. Their national leaders certainly humiliated. The IRGC humiliated. And I believe the proxies are completely stunned by the results, that Iran was not able to achieve anything other than prove their willingness to attack Israel. And yes, I think there's huge opportunity here for Israel and the United States going forward to leverage this.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And there's plenty of time for Israel to respond, but you think they should go patiently now. How come?
Well, I think about it. I mean, Israel's in the best position they've been in some time, given America's criticism of their operational war aims and how they're executing them, the international community, widespread condemnation of Israel. But after this attack and Israel's ability to defend successfully against it, they are really in a pretty good place. And I think this opens a window here for the international community and the United States to get really tough about sanctions on Iran. And there are discussions taking place in the UN about it. There's discussions in the Congress of the United States. And as you know, this administration is eased up on the sanctions on Iran, which has gotten them flush with money. So
yeah, that is indeed the case. And Jack Keene is right. Although I'm not exactly sure how much humiliation the IRGC and thus Iran feels at this particular moment. No, that wasn't an attack, an all-out attack. How do we know that? Well, because the anti-collision lights on the drones were lit. In other words, they weren't trying to hide those drones. First of all, they were of limited capacity. The most amazing thing about the drones is they could fly as far as they did and reasonably on target. That's the most amazing thing. It's not like Israel didn't know they were coming. There is an interesting scenario. There's a scenario that hasn't been actually discussed much. There was a book by a guy named Tom Clancy 20 years ago called Red Storm Rising. One of the scenes in that particular book was a scenario that I'm going to discuss here in just a couple of minutes. And it's eerily similar to what we're seeing here. There is an implication, and we'll discuss that as well. This is the Wells Report, back with more coming up in just a moment.
Nobody wants to get ripped off, broken into, or robbed, but nobody wants to pay a lot of money to have their home protected either. I've got an offer to tell you about to provide home security for your home for less than $1 a day. For real, with no installation or equipment charges. And this is from a company rated #1 by a leading consumer research company. According to the facts, most of you won't even call unless there's a burglary in your neighborhood or something bad happened. So let's give you a reason. Save money. For less than $1 a day with no other costs, you can get your home secured. Plus, get a lifetime equipment replacement warranty. You need protection for your home. Call the Home Security Hotline right now.
Get your home secured for less than $1 a day, and every caller today immediately qualifies for free installation. Call now.
Call 877-275-0973. 877-275-0973. That's 877-275-0973.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost. How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back, but you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. I am not a military expert. I'm not a strategist. If I have any competence when it comes to conflict, it's probably as a tactical thinker, mainly because strategic analysis of things and subsequent orders require people to actually go out and carry them out. That's the part of conflict that I find the most interesting. That being said, also being said that I'm certainly not going to disagree with General Jack Keane, I will say this. I alluded to Red Storm Rising, which was a book written some 20 years ago by Tom Clancy. In that book, there was an attack that was created by Russian military forces that involved a couple of different things. I don't want to get too far in the weeds here, but I do want to explain something that I think is important in this discussion. That particular attack involved various drones using what is a part of electronic countermeasures. Electronic countermeasures is a way to saturate any kind of early warning system for the effect of essentially rendering it blind. That's not what occurred here. What occurred in the book was that those drones carried transponders that made them look like bombers. And indeed, what ended up happening was an Allied response took out most of those fake drones until an actual fighter aircraft got to look at what they were shooting down. They were shooting down drones, which left the entire theater of operations open to a serious attack with cruise missiles and other weapons. So when you look at a situation like this, I see a different scenario. What I see is Iran proceeding to a nuclear weapons capability. What I see this as is a rehearsal. 6 ballistic missiles impacted on the territories of Israel. 6. With all of the vaunted anti-weapons capabilities that Israel showed, there were still 6 that landed. Let's assume Iran can come up with flyable nuclear weapons of the uranium variety, very much like the little boy bomb in Hiroshima. If indeed they try this again, the drones will not be lit. They will probably be slow moving. They will probably do all the things, followed by cruise missiles, and then a barrage of ICBMs fired by Iran carrying nuclear weapons. Of those 5 weapons, only 1 needs to impact. And if that's that, well, that is World War III. That isn't being discussed. I will discuss it. And so when you look at all of this, and it comes back down to politics, unfortunately, because this is an election year, are we trying to make President Joe Biden look big and tough and saying, hey, you're not going to do this? If so, then what we have seen is an abject failure on that strategy. Insofar as President Biden immediately said, we're not going to do anything. Let Israel handle its own business. And then tried to convince, if not successfully, the G7 to follow in those footsteps. So when we look at this, we have to see something beyond it. There's a group of laws called Murphy's Laws of Combat. And one of them is, if the firefight is going well, it's an ambush. The firefight between those drones, Israel, Allied forces, was going well. Most of them were shot down. Some were not. I believe that the entire thing was a rehearsal for Iran Command to take a look and see just exactly what something like this would represent as a matter of success. I believe that Iran is essentially preparing for a nuclear conflict with Israel, and I believe this was a rehearsal. Just my idea, just my opinion, just my thought on the subject, just my analysis. If you have a different one, please call 817-379-2172. Australia, between October of 1996 and September of 1997, responded to what they perceived was a gross gun violence problem with a solution that was both straightforward and severe. This, by the way, being reported by Fox a couple of years ago. It collected roughly 650,000 privately held guns. It was one of the largest mandatory gun buyback programs in recent history. And so when you looked at that, and those people who believe that that kind of thing was something that the rest of the world's democracy should follow, you have to look at the result. And here are a couple of examples of that. Australian police are now saying, this from Fox News, Australian police are now saying the stabbing of a church bishop and priest during a live-streamed mass outside of Sydney is a terrorist incident. A 16-year-old male suspect, who has not been publicly identified, is in custody following the attack Monday night at the Assyrian Christ Good Shepherd Church in Wakeley. We believe there are elements that are satisfied in terms of religious motivated extremism, said New South Wales State Police Commissioner Karen Webb. This according to Reuters. After consideration of all the material, I have declared that it was a terrorist incident. The church's live stream showed a man later identified as Bishop Mari Emmanuel behind the altar at a church when a man walked toward him with an unknown object. The man lunged at him and began to stab him in the chest. There is reporting. This comes from CNN. Let's take a look at just exactly how they reported this story earlier this week here on the Wells Report. Check this out.
Just days after the mass stabbing at a Sydney shopping mall, police in Australia are investigating another stabbing attack in the city, this time at a church in what authorities are calling a terrorist act. It was caught on the church's live stream. The attacker is seen approaching the lectern and stabbing the bishop as he was delivering a sermon. Both the bishop and a parish priest were injured but are expected to recover. Parishioners were able to restrain the attacker until police arrived. They say he's 16 years old and not on any terror watch list. CNN's Anna Corin is in Hong Kong. She joins us now with more on the attack. Good to see you, Anna. So what more are you learning about this latest stabbing in Australia and, of course, the riots that followed?
Yeah, it was extraordinary what took place overnight in Wakeley in Sydney's western suburbs. But as you say, Rosemary, this involves a 16-year-old. You know, he stabbed this bishop in the face with a knife at a Syrian Orthodox church. The bishop, he was giving a sermon at the Christ the Good Shepherd Church. And as you mentioned, it was being live streamed. So this was all caught on camera. People inside the church, they immediately raced forward to try to protect the bishop. There was a priest who tried to intervene. He was also injured. But this teenager, this 16-year-old, he was tackled to the ground by parishioners. And there is a video that shows him then smiling as he's being pinned down by one of the parishioners whilst they're condemning him. Police have said that this was an act of religious motivated extremism that has been labelled a terror incident. It's believed that the attacker said something to the bishop before repeatedly stabbing him. Police are yet to reveal what was said, but that is one of the reasons why this has been declared a terror incident. Now, what happened next outside the church, it really beggars belief. Hundreds of people gathered and then riots broke out as the crowd began attacking the police. They were throwing bricks, chunks of concrete, fence palings. Police and paramedics, they were holed up inside the church for something like 3.5 hours. We understand that police were injured on the scene. There were vehicles, 20 vehicles that were damaged, police vehicles. And then at least 30 people treated for injuries. The riot squad had to be called in along with the tactical operations unit. And look, it's worth noting, Rosemary, for our wider audience, that Western Sydney and some of these suburbs, you know, they are well known for their gang violence. The Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, he addressed the media this morning. He condemned the attack and the ensuing violence on the police. Let's take a listen.
This is a disturbing incident. There is no place for violence in our community. There is no place for violent extremism. We are a peace-loving nation. This is a time to unite, not divide as a community and as a country.
And that was the report from CNN. There is other reporting on this. It comes from the New York Times. This was from a while ago, specifically April 13th. 6 people were killed, others injured in a stabbing rampage at a crowded major mall in Sydney, Australia. It's Australia's deadly act of mass violence in at least 8 years. The attacker was shot and killed by a lone police officer who was directed into the mall by people fleeing the scene. The officer was following the man with the knife, trying to catch up to him when he turned and lunged at her with the weapon. This, according to police. The officer opened fire, saving lives. Anthony Cook, Assistant Commissioner for New South Wales Police, told the New York Times. And so what do we have? What we have is an opportunity and indeed an actual bit of Australian law to disarm their law-abiding public. The only people that participated in this mandatory buyback in the late 90s were indeed law-abiding citizens, now rendered defenseless. And so what we have is we now have attacks in the first case, a terrorist attack being accomplished by knives. This is the ridiculous slope that people who wish to disarm law-abiding people both face and follow. This is a circumstance where people are told that there's no reason for you to be able to defend yourself using deadly force. And so there was no one in the mall except for one lone police officer that was able to do anything to stop this man. When seconds count, police are only minutes away. By the time she was able to neutralize the suspect, by the time she was able to do that, 6 people were dead, countless others were stabbed, including a baby. So, what can we do now? What can Australia do now? Well, there's only one thing they can do. They can now put themselves in a position where they simply must enact a mandatory government buyback of all knives. They simply have to get the knives off the street. Australia is a peace-loving nation. They can't tolerate public violence on that level, so knives being used now, since guns are so much harder to get, they simply have to do something about confiscating knives. Well, and then, of course, you've got to confiscate hammers. The number one murder weapon in the history of the human endeavor has been blunt force, usually by things resembling hammers, if not hammers. There's FBI data that says the number one murder weapon in the United States are hammers. And therefore, what has to happen after Israel finishes the mandatory knife buyback, they're going to have to do a mandatory hammer buyback. Well, John David, you say blunt force is the basic number one murder weapon or murder strategy in the entire human event, in the entire human history. Well, it's true. Well, let's see. What is left besides knives and hammers? Well, rocks. There must be an Australian mandatory buyback of rocks or anything resembling rocks. Like, for example, the little pavers that you use to line your fireplace, your fire pit, your garden. We got to get rid of those. Got to be a mandatory buyback. And on and on and on. Oh, well, now, wait a minute. Okay, so those are just the pavers. What about actual rocks? Got to be a mandatory buyback on rocks. Why is this? Why is this being pursued? Well, because politicians seeking votes, for whatever reason, are also seeking a disarmed public. We've seen this in Canada. We've seen this in Australia. We don't need to see this in these United States. There are too many people out there willing to end your life. Police in the United States of America and other free societies and republics around the world are there to both enforce law by cleaning up the mess and arresting those responsible. Remember, cleaning up the mess and arresting those responsible. What does that leave out? The actual attack. Well, how do you stop the actual attack? Well, you start guessing to see who might be capable and might be willing to create some kind of deadly attack on a completely unaware public. This is not something that we can think about or even discuss, let alone vote on. This is something that requires something more practical. That practicality, in my opinion, is simply leaving things alone just as they are here in these United States before we follow into an abysmal slippery slope like Australia and Canada.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back, but you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. While we're on the subject of slippery slopes and making decisions for others that turn out disastrously, let's turn to gender-affirming care. Parents are sounding off on a new medical study finding fertility blockers could cause long-term fertility and health problems in boys. This is reported by Fox News. The study from the Mayo Clinic, which has not yet been peer-reviewed, analyzed more than 130,000 sperm cells from male children with gender dysphoria. The researchers examined the testicular cells of boys who had been on puberty blockers anywhere from 3 months to 52 months and compared them to cells of a control group who had not been on the blockers. Among those on puberty blockers, researchers identified mild to severe sex gland atrophy, determining that the medications accelerated aging and functioning of testicular cells. The findings suggest that puberty blockers' impacts may be permanent, disputing claims that such effects can be reversed. The researchers also detected cases of microlithiasis, which is marked by the presence of small clusters of calcium in the cells of testicles. Testicular microlithiasis has been linked to an increase of testicular cancer. Parents groups who have advocated against the use of transgender treatments on children told Fox News Digital they were thankful the study was attracting headlines. Quote, We believe that when parents have accurate information about puberty blockers and the irreversible harms they cause, we will see a drastic drop in the amount of parents agreeing to put their children on these drugs, said Tiffany Justice, co-founder of Moms for Liberty. The problem has been that the American medical institutions, hospitals, the American Academy of Pediatrics have not been honest with parents about the harms of puberty blockers and the possibility of harms, and that's unforgivable. As a side note, when I searched for this story, I found the first few entries saying that puberty blockers are completely harmless. Really? Not so much, according to this study, at least. The problem has been that the American medical institutions, hospitals, and the American Academy of Pediatrics have not been honest, according to Moms for Liberty. The American Academy of Pediatrics has long backed gender-affirming treatments for minors. Last year, the AAP called for a systemic review of medical research supporting the treatments while continuing to affirm its support for these practices. In other words, the people charged with administering the care of our children medically have decided, hey, we've got to continue supporting this until we can find out whether or not they're safe. That's actually what's happening here. That's exactly what they just said. The American Academy of Pediatrics has long backed gender-affirming treatments for minors. Last year, they called for a systematic review of medical research supporting the treatments while continuing to affirm its support for these practices. Okay, how about this? Why don't you affirm support for those practices after the medical research is in? I know that seems crazy. It's wild. It's, well, logical, pragmatic, and altogether reasonable. Why isn't the American Academy of Pediatrics being reasonable? Why are they not being logical? Why are they not being pragmatic? Because the American Academy of Pediatrics seems to be a political organization instead of one devoted to medical care. That's something we're going to see more of instead of less of as the government infuses itself into American medical care. The simple case of this matter is that if it's government, it's political. If it's political, it's about political whim and the shifting sands of political opinion. That's not how you take care of anything, let alone medical care for the citizens of your country. It's abominable. It's absolutely abominable. Tiffany Justice from Moms for Liberty said she was heartbroken for parents who have been told by medical experts these treatments were reversible. Quote, I have so much compassion for parents who are going to realize they put their children on these drugs that are going to cause irreversible harms for the rest of their lives, possibly, because they were told it wouldn't be by an expert class that has completely failed the American people. She went on to say that parents deserve accurate information when they're making decisions for their children. No child is able to consent to puberty blockers. That's absolutely true. I don't care what children do after they're 18 years of age. If they want to change their bodies irrevocably because they have gender dysphoria, well, that's America. They get to do that. But when we're talking about making those decisions before they are 18, irreversible in physical effect, and certainly possibly irreversible when it comes to these medications, that's monstrous. That is monstrous. There's an ethical question going on about the removal or surgery that is designed for a cosmetic purpose as opposed to a medical one, especially involving the removal of various organs for various reasons. That we would go down this road is, as I said, beyond monstrous. We are sexually mutilating children. After 18, that's their decision. Before 18, that's ours. The responsibility rests with the people making those decisions. And it looks to me like those decisions are being made politically as opposed to in reality. And of course, I suppose if you think the biggest problem that we have in the United States of America is toxic masculinity, the best way to get away from that is to turn little boys into little girls. Problem solved. This is the Wells Report. Hour number 2 is next.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back, but you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
Nobody wants to get ripped off, broken into, or robbed, but nobody wants to pay a lot of money to have their home protected either. I've got an offer to tell you about to provide home security for your home for less than $1 a day. For real, with no installation or equipment charges. And this is from a company rated #1 by a leading consumer research company. According to the facts, most of you won't even call unless there's a burglary in your neighborhood or something bad happened. So let's give you a reason. Save money. For less than $1 a day with no other costs, you can get your home secured. Plus, get a lifetime equipment replacement warranty. You need protection for your home. Call the Home Security Hotline right now.
Get your home secured for less than $1 a day, and every caller today immediately qualifies for free installation. Call now.
Call 877-275-0973. 877-275-0973. That's 877-275-0973.
Hey, thanks for joining us this morning for the Wells Report, and make sure you share us with all your friends on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Rumble, Patreon, and don't forget to check out our Substack column, which will be coming up a little bit later on this afternoon. When you do all this, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you give us those thumbs up. They are really important. Check the notification box so you know when we're on the air, and whatever you do, join us every morning, Monday through Friday, 9 to 11 a.m. Central Time, for the Wells Report.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost.
North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. We report the news honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary. Commentary is not news, rather it is opinion. And so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. There is something unfolding before our very eyes that threatens to derail any kind of fair assessment of the 2024 election. That is what is referred to as the Trump hush money trial currently going on in the Bureau. I keep saying Bureau. The Borough of Manhattan against President Donald Trump. And so this particular trial started yesterday, and there are results from that from a news standpoint. This from USA Today. With its legal team attacking the judge as biased, the prosecution calling for him to be fined for violating a gag order, Donald Trump's historic criminal trial on charges he falsified business records to hide a hush money payment to a porn star before the 2016 presidential election began yesterday. Judge John Merchan continued his trend of rejecting Trump motions to delay the start of the trial before he began sifting through the 500 potential jurors with a goal of finding 12 to serve with 6 alternates. Jury selection could take 2 weeks. The trial could last 6 to 8 weeks. It is a mandate from Judge Merchan that President Trump be at the trial every single day. Trump, the presumptive presidential nominee, has pled not guilty to 34 felony counts of falsifying business records to hide the payment. Prosecutors asked Merchan to fine Trump for allegedly violating a gag order in the case. He is yet to rule. The size of the jury pool was quickly reduced as potential jurors said they could not judge the case fairly or had other conflicts. By the way, those people that say they can't judge the case fairly, good for you. Good for you for realizing the situation that you are in. You live in a borough where President Trump in 2020 garnered 12% of the vote. Of all the people living in the borough of Manhattan, 12% is a sizable number. But that being said, what are the chances of finding a jury that is balanced, where there are 6 people that voted for Donald Trump and 6 people that voted for someone else, President Joe Biden or someone else? Indeed, with 6 alternates, 3 and 3. What are the chances? Not good. Not good. You're supposed to be judged by a jury of your peers. They're supposed to be impartial until they hear the case. Is that happening? You tell me. 817-379-2172. The other aspect of this is with every day that Donald Trump spends in that trial under threat of arrest by Judge Merchan, he is not campaigning. He is being hindered for campaigning for his election to the presidency by this trial. Legal experts are almost united in the idea that this trial is going nowhere. Indeed, it should be thrown out. I suspect that any nonpartisan judge would do exactly that. This is the borough of Manhattan seeking to leverage their way into enforcing federal law. The Federal Elections Committee looked at all of these charges and declined to prosecute President Trump or find him in any way, shape, or form liable or culpable for misconduct. This trial is going nowhere except in the biased minds of the judge and possibly the jury. That's the way I see it. There are 9 takeaways from the first day of the trial. This, according to USA Today. Judge Merchan is sticking with the case despite a Trump request to withdraw. Merchan opened the day by refusing to recuse himself from the case. Trump's legal team had argued Merchan's role is improper because his daughter heads a marketing agency that works for Democrat candidates. Indeed, there is fundraising going on the part of that particular marketing agency in the name of trying to elect Democrat candidates. Merchan rejected the request by citing an opinion from the New York State Advisory Committee on Judicial Ethics that his impartiality could not be reasonably questioned because Trump's case does not involve his daughter's business. Okay, but the presence of Judge Merchan indeed does involve his daughter's business. That's just analysis on my part. The court will not address this matter further, meaning he ruled with prejudice. That is part of what USA Today said. Prosecutors can describe the Access Hollywood tape, but cannot play it, according to the judge. Jurors can hear testimony about the infamous Access Hollywood tape, which caused a furor when it was released late in the 2016 presidential campaign, part of an October surprise. The judge repeated a previous ruling that he regards the 2005 video of President Trump crudely describing grabbing women as prejudicial. The $130,000 payment to porn star Stormy Daniels, which is at the heart of the case against Trump, came as his campaign sought to prevent other scandalous stories from breaking in the weeks before the 2016 election. This is a strategy that was followed by Bill Clinton and those people trying to get Bill Clinton elected the first time around at the end of the George H.W. Bush administration. Prosecutors wanted to play the tape as an alleged admission of sexual assault. Merchan ruled that he would only allow prosecutors to describe what Trump said. What I didn't want was for jurors to hear Mr. Trump's voice, according to Judge Merchan. Prosecutors asked to fine Trump for allegedly violating a gag order. Prosecutors asked Merchan to fine Trump $3,000 for allegedly violating a gag order with social media posts about potential witnesses. Those witnesses are people that Donald Trump knows and you know as well, including Michael Cohen. Merchan has postponed his decision. Prosecutor Christopher Conroy said that each of 3 social media posts should be punished with a $1,000 fine. Thanking Michael Avenatti, a former lawyer for Stormy Daniels, who was imprisoned for stealing from her, for a statement he made calling it outrageous that potential witness Michael Cohen and Daniels could be interviewed on television, but Trump was not allowed to respond. Trump said the statement revealed the truth about 2 sleaze bags. The next tweet was posting a photograph of 2018 Daniels, a statement denying she had sex with President Trump. And the third asking whether disgraced attorney and felon Michael Cohen had been prosecuted for lying. He attacked witnesses in this case, said Conroy. In a civil business trial earlier this year, Judge Arthur Engoron fired Trump $15,000 for violating gag orders with posts about his clerk. Merchan did not rule immediately, said he would hold a hearing on the gag order April 23rd. This, by the way, also allows the trial to continue for some matter of days. In other words, keeping President Trump off the campaign trail for as long as possible. Again, just my opinion. Police investigated a bomb threat against DA Alvin Bragg. Police were investigating a bomb threat targeting the home of Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg Monday morning. This according to the Associated Press. Law enforcement officials said a 911 caller reported the threat just before 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Bragg previously faced an emergency when a powdery substance was discovered last month in a threatening letter in a mailroom at the prosecutor's office, this according to the Associated Press. Another takeaway was that Trump called the trial political persecution, said it's an honor to attend. Trump gave a 1-minute statement to reporters before entering the courtroom, calling the trial a political prosecution or persecution, saying he was proud and honored to be there. It is a political persecution, said Trump. It's a case that should have never been brought. It's an assault on America. That's why I'm very proud to be here. Trump cited unnamed legal scholars calling the case nonsense as he campaigns against President Joe Biden to return to the White House. By the way, when I refer to legal experts saying that the case is, in Trump's words, nonsense, I'm not mouthing the words of President Trump. I did that research on my own. This is political nonsense. This is lawfare. More about that coming up in just a couple of moments. And then there was this. Trump appeared to nod off during legal arguments amid legal wrangling before the launch or before lunch of the trial. Trump appeared to nod off a few times, his eyes closing, his head drooping before jerking back up. This according to several news reports. One of the anecdotes was from Maggie Haberman, a New York Times reporter who wrote a book about Trump called Confidence Man, The Making of Donald Trump and the Breaking of America. Trump glared at Haberman for several seconds before walking out of the courtroom during a short afternoon break. After the lunch break, Merchan began calling 500 potential jurors into the courtroom in groups of about 100 for lawyers of both sides to question them. Jurors will remain anonymous, their addresses revealed only to the lawyers. Merchan settled on a list of 42 questions to be asked, with a goal of finding an impartial panel of 12 jurors and 6 alternates. Potential jurors are being asked if they've ever attended a rally of Trump or his opponents or followed Trump or his adversaries on social media. The question quickly whittled down the jury pool. 50 of the first 96 potential jurors were excused from the trial because they indicated they could not judge Trump fairly and impartially. That was good on their part. At least 9 more were excused after they indicated they couldn't serve for other reasons that were not disclosed, leaving a potential pool of 34 potential jurors in the first batch. The questions to individuals became more detailed. Merchan excused the third potential juror for acknowledging she read or listened to podcasts by Trump critics, Michael Cohen or former Manhattan prosecutor Mike Pomerantz, who quit when it looked like Bragg would not prosecute the case. April trial dates will come with several interruptions. The trial is scheduled to last 6 to 8 weeks, with Merchan scheduling Wednesdays off so we can handle other matters. Merchan said jurors would not be required to work on the Jewish holiday of Passover, so the trial may break after lunch on April 22nd and 23rd when Seder dinners are scheduled, and not meet on April 29th and 30th when full-day festivals are held. President Trump requested a day off on April 25th so he could attend Supreme Court arguments about his immunity claims in the federal court, and on May 17th so he could attend his son Barron's high school graduation. Merchan rejected the April request, did not immediately rule on the May graduation date. So, President Trump is someone who is not afraid to discuss what is going on around him. After yesterday's proceedings, he saw fit to spend some time with the press. That, of course, was pool video. We bring that to you now here on the Wells Report.
So thank you very much. We had some amazing things happen today. As you know, my son has graduated from high school, and it looks like the judge will not let me go through the graduation of my son, who's worked very, very hard. He's a great student. He's very proud of the fact that he did so well. And I was looking forward for years to have graduation with his mother and father there. And it looks like the judge isn't going to allow me to escape this scam. It's a scam trial. If you read all of the legal pundits, all of the legal scholars today, there's not one that I see that said this is a case that should be brought or tried. It's a scam. It's a political witch hunt. It continues, and it continues forever. and we're not going to be given a fair trial. It's a very, very sad thing. In addition, as you know, next Thursday, we're before the United States Supreme Court on a very big hearing on immunity. And this is something that we've been waiting for a long time. And the judge, of course, is not going to allow us. He's a very conflicted judge, and he's not going to allow us to go to that. He won't allow me to leave here for a half a day, go to D.C. and go before the United States Supreme Court because he thinks he's superior, I guess, to the Supreme Court. We got a real problem with this judge. We have a real problem with a lot of things having to do with this trial, including the DA, because you go right outside and people are being mugged and killed all day long, and he's sitting here all day with about 10 or 12 prosecutors over nothing. Over what people say shouldn't be a trial. So I just want to thank you very much. But that I can't go to my son's graduation, or that I can't go to the United States Supreme Court, that I'm not in Georgia or Florida or North Carolina campaigning like I should be. It's perfect for the radical left Democrats. That's exactly what they want. This is about election interference. That's all it's about. Thank you very much.
That was President Trump after the first day of the proceedings against him in a New York Manhattan court. He's got a lot of points there that are completely right on the button. There is some backlash. Occasionally, actually not occasionally, there is a moment when the tide turns. And indeed, that may be the case in this particular circumstance. Bill Maher is a guy who has an HBO show that, for all intents and purposes, gets better every year as Bill Maher begins to logically look at what he's been espousing over the years and changing his positions. The circumstance that we have here is that Bill Maher is a guy who believes that that we're going a little bit too far here, and he specifically pointed out CNN coverage. Real-time host Bill Maher took a swipe at corporate colleagues CNN for the network's nonstop bashing of former President Donald Trump, suggesting it's gotten boring even for a Trump hater like himself. CNN, which has long been plagued with dwindling viewership, has relied on Maher for content over the past several months, more recently deciding to air encore episodes of his HBO show on Saturday nights, as both networks are owned by Warner Brothers Discovery. On Sunday's installment of his Club Random podcast, Maher told former TV anchor Katie Couric that he doesn't trust anyone in the legacy media, including CNN. Quote, "I don't trust anyone is giving me the full story. Everyone is giving me their spin on the story, including the places I used to be. I thought fairly neutral, like CNN and the New York Times. I think they used to be a lot more neutral." You think they're more sort of an activist? It's an activist situation, said Couric. Maher responded, "Yes. You could always slant any story. My earliest memories of my father and me talking about something, I remember him telling me like the bias has come through somehow. And I remember the examples he used. He said, like, if you say he squawked about it as opposed to what he said, then he said Robert Kennedy, so this must be before 68 when he was killed. I was definitely under 12. He said Robert Kennedy, if you like him, he is dedicated. If you hate him, he is ruthless. But it got worse. It got to the point where each side thinks they have to load their issues because we can't really be trusted with both sides because the other side is so powerful and is such an existential threat. They both think the other side is that kind of a threat that would ruin the entire nation. We just have to do everything we can. We can't trust them to make sure that they have the one true and correct opinion, Maher said, talking about American voters. Couric appeared to defend the media, saying how things have changed so dramatically because of Trump and blamed him for the erasure of decorum and a level of basic decency in this country, points that Maher agreed with. There is a point in a political campaign when one candidate decides to go what's called negative. In other words, not talking about the issues confronting the voters, but talking about the issue that confronts them as their political opponent must be destroyed personally in an effort to win. That situation is what we're seeing here. and it is something that routinely disappears. It routinely disappears as a circumstance when you finally go too far. You just go too far, and the backlash is always immediate, and it is always deleterious to the person trying to practice negative politics. That's what we're seeing here. This idea, for example, that President Trump is some sort of incredible human being that deserves to be scourged at the first possible opportunity is preposterous. And it is something that has to stop. Or the Democrats are going to lose in spectacular fashion because the people of the United States simply will not tolerate this. Not in my view. This is the Wells Report. Please stand by. There will be more coming up in just a moment.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back, but you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
Good morning. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. As we come to this, there are all kinds of political machinations around the nation, including some from the Supreme Court of the United States. The Supreme Court will hear arguments, this will happen today, about whether an obstruction law wielded against 1/4 of the defendants charged in the Capitol attack on January 6th should be invalidated. The outcome could help Donald Trump, who is facing charges related to trying to overturn the 2020 election. It could also have significant consequences for the January 6th rioters who were charged with an obstruction of an official proceeding. The charge can add up to 20 years to a prison sentence. A former police officer, Joseph Fisher, was charged in the riot. He contends that Congress approved the law in 2002 after the Enron scandal to target document shredding, which he did not do at the Capitol. but government lawyers contend the law is a catch-all that includes blocking official meetings such as Congress, counting electoral college votes. At this moment in the narrative, you have to point out that there have been other opportunities and indeed incidences where people obstructed an official proceeding, specifically Palestinian protesters in the Capitol. Where were the FBI wanted posters? Where were they? Where was the almost maniacal prosecution of those people? Haven't seen anything yet, have you? So that's an important point of this particular case. Whether it will make it into the thought process of the Supreme Court remains to be seen. Once again, I have talked about the vacuum that often exists when you find yourself in a position where you're dealing with people who, for whatever reason, are solely focused on a legal implication as opposed to one based in reality. And so we see that at some point, we may indeed find ourselves in a position where this changes. Well, we'll find out. We will find out. Let's continue with the story, by the way. The High Court's decision could echo widely because more than 1/4 of January 6 defendants face the charge, including President Trump himself. Several prisoners have been released pending their appeals because justices could overrule how the law has been applied. Justice Department Special Counsel Jack Smith has argued even if the law is invalidated for rioters, it could still somehow be applied to Trump because of other actions he took leading up to January 6th. This ignores the fact that before you charge somebody, there must be a specification of a crime. So in other words, if Jack Smith hasn't specified a crime that this law would indeed apply to, then it's not going to make the trial. It's just not. Unless, of course, there's some sort of bizarre judicial decision made by Eileen Cannon, which may indeed happen because we can see that there are certain political ramifications involved in judges taking part in political trials, which these most assuredly are. The High Court has no deadline to resolve the dispute. A decision is expected by the end of June. Here's what we know, according to USA Today. Fisher entered the Capitol Rotunda January 6th and faces a handful of misdemeanors with up to 1-year sentences and a disputed felony obstruction charge that we're reporting on. It carries a maximum 20-year sentence. Congress approved the law in 2002 as a part of an overhaul of the financial system to prohibit destruction of documents after scandals surrounding Enron. This, according to court records. The disputed language prohibits anyone from corruptly destroying or concealing a government record, or who otherwise obstructs, influences, or impedes any official proceeding or attempt to do so. Indeed, in this particular case, the way I read it is that we have an opportunity where, what we have here is a situation where, doggone it, we just can't we just can't use the entire law because the entire law, the first part of it, is basically irrelevant. But the second part, so what we're doing is we're parsing laws to be able to base prosecutions of people, sometimes including sentences of 2 decades, for the sake of politics. For the sake of politics. The destruction of the judicial branch of our government and the justice system of the United States. This is the Wells Report. John David Wells at your service. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. How do you see all this? Is this law fair? Will this law fair backlash on its practitioners? Do you think that might happen, or do you think that the United States, the people of the United States, will be led around by the nose until it's too late? This is the Wells.
Nobody wants to get ripped off, broken into, or robbed, but nobody wants to pay a lot of money to have their home protected either. I've got an offer to tell you about to provide home security for your home for less than $1 a day. For real, with no installation or equipment charges. And this is from a company rated #1 by a leading consumer research company. According to the facts, most of you won't even call unless there's a burglary in your neighborhood or something bad happened. So let's give you a reason. Save money. For less than $1 a day with no other costs, you can get your home secured. Plus, get a lifetime equipment replacement warranty. You need protection for your home. Call the Home Security Hotline right now.
Get your home secured for less than $1 a day, and every caller today immediately qualifies for free installation. Call now.
Call 877-275-0973. 877-275-0973. That's 877-275-0973.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost. How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back, but you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. Hi, good morning. I am John David Wells. We report the news honestly and fairly. It gives me great joy to do so. But not everybody in the American media is so inclined. I don't know why that is, because to me, there is nothing more satisfying than reporting news based on fact. There are others who report news based on their politics. That is something that has saturated the mainstream media in these United States. And indeed, you know that for yourself because you're here. we try to do something different. What we try to do is we try to give you the facts that you need to make better decisions. We hope we're being successful. In fact, if you find any value in this broadcast, please share it with all your friends. Share it with the people that are on your timeline. Invite them to subscribe to the broadcast. You do it yourself. Also, hit those thumbs up buttons, the thumbs up buttons. Those tell people that are administrating the show. And by the way, we have a large collection of platforms that carry this show for free. I wanted to say this for a few days, but there are a lot of platforms: Facebook, YouTube, X, Twitch, Rumble, Patreon, that allow me to put this broadcast in front of the American people and don't charge me a dime. YouTube has, in some cases unjustly, in some cases thoroughly justly, suspended this broadcast for reasons that involve a misunderstanding of this reporting, and also for a mistake I made by playing copywritten news material. One of the things we do, this is kind of in the weeds, but one of the things we do is we use mainstream media news outlets and bring those things to you as an adjunct to their efforts, not as a way to steal. What we're trying to do is we're trying to inform you. And so far, we've been very successful, both with the news outlets and these platforms. From the depth of all that I have as a news professional, thank you to all of those platforms, and thank you for watching this broadcast. Getting back to our point of view where politics saturates mainstream media, there was a story involving National Public Radio, NPR. Veteran NPR editor Uri Berliner detailed his employer's absence of viewpoint diversity last week in a stunning rebuke of the news organization, and a former high-level NPR executive has now come out saying that he feels a real problem was identified in Berliner's scathing piece. This being reported by Fox News. Quote, "I'm not surprised because he's a very, very thoughtful and forthright guy," said a former high-level NPR executive who worked with Berliner, telling Fox News on the condition of anonymity. Berliner penned a bombshell piece in the Free Press that criticized NPR's coverage of Russiagate, the COVID lab leak theory, Hunter Biden's scandalous laptop, embrace of the theory of systemic racism, and accused the organization of downplaying anti-Semitism following October 7th. He also wrote that registration records in 2021 showed an astonishing disparity between Democrats and Republicans in the NPR newsroom, and said that staffers didn't want to help former President Trump, among other things, or other people actually, to indicate an open-minded spirit no longer exists at NPR. The ex-NPR executive noted that there seems to be, quote, something going on in the media as NBC and MSNBC hosts recently attacked their own employer for firing former Republican National Committee head Ronna McDaniel, who was, for hiring, not firing, the hiring of former Republican National Committee head Ronna McDaniel, which created a hassle among the MSNBC hosts. After that backlash, McDaniel was swiftly fired. He goes on to say, quote, "I think a lot of news organizations are struggling with these issues, with issues of fairness and the ability to tell more than one story," noting that journalists need to figure out how to accurately report on something they personally disagree with. I do that every day. Because I'm not some egocentric oracle of everything. I represent facts. I bring the facts to you. You decide what they mean to you. You make decisions based on that information, because what I hope is that you get an actual factual understanding of the news product that is beating you over the head with anti-political opposition propaganda. The longtime insider said the current generation of younger journalists feel they're not being listened to and aren't willing to put in the work needed to hone their craft. The executive said, quote, "When I started in the business, journalism was not seen as a profession, but as a craft. Day after day, he used an expletive, you did, shall we say, unsatisfactory assignments." And by the way, the word he used rhymes with bitty. You worked awful shifts, and gradually you got to understand the culture of the news organizations that were paying your salary, he said. Now we have got a new generation of young journalists who are coming into the business and saying, well, wait a minute, I got a journalism degree from such and such university. Why am I not being listened to? Why are my ideas not considered right and mature enough? I have news to my younger colleagues. The reason that's the case is because your ideas are not right and mature enough. When I started doing this show in 2001 after the 9/11 attack, I wasn't qualified to do it. And I was told so by news professionals that I deeply respect to this day. I wasn't insulted. I didn't say, well, screw you, what I think counts. What I said was I'd better turn myself into a better journalist right this minute. Indeed, one of those people who criticized me, somebody I truly admire, talked to me some years afterwards, and I brought that up. And she said, yeah, but that was 5 or 6 years ago. You've come a long way. That is what younger journalists need to realize. It's not what you think. It's what you see. Report the facts as you see them. Jealously guard the reality of the event that you're covering. Be as transparent and undistorted a lens as you can be between the event that you perceived, the event that you covered, the event that you watched, the truth from it in your transmittal of that report to your listeners and to your viewers. You have to be transparent. At some other time, someone might ask you, well, what do you think, Bill? Then you can put your ideas on the table, but pay very close attention to how those ideas are dealt with. That will tell you whether or not you're making it and whether or not you're, quote, right and mature enough. So this particular executive says he feels news organizations are trying very hard to support this generation of impatient young journalists, but conflicts are emerging as a result. The Berliner has identified a real problem, but he's unleashed an incredible reaction. He's given the impression that he's an older white guy, that he resents these younger, more diverse people muscling in. He said that I'm sure is not his intention. I think his intention is how do you do journalism that serves a broader audience, indeed a broadcast, which, by the way, is how I refer to this show. It's a broadcast. Broadcast. You can't speak to everyone individually. You don't know how they think. So you provide facts and just facts. Every time you move away from that and put opinion in your news, what you're doing is alienating anybody who disagrees with you. And the ratings of news show it. Young people are forcing newsrooms to be more inclusive, said Berliner. He identified the fact that he's now working in an environment that seems to exclude him because he's an older white guy. Well, that's killing the messenger, isn't it? By the way, the executive said that Berliner is doing terrific work and did terrific work during his tenure. Quote, it seems to me it would be very difficult for him now at NPR. I've seen stuff on the internet that he's come under attack by people who are still there. I think he did this out of a sense of principle. Yeah, principle. It's a voluntary act. You have to have principles. You have to put your ego in your pocket. What you think is not relevant. What you know from a factual standpoint is. Berliner's longtime colleague said it's also noteworthy that the takedown of NPR was published in a former New York Times opinion editor Barry Weiss's Free Press website. By the way, I applied to Free Press. I haven't heard back yet. Weiss famously left the New York Times with a scathing resignation letter saying she was bullied by colleagues in what she called, quote, an illiberal environment. It was definitely well thought out by him, The job of journalism, he's talking about Berliner, the job of journalism has become more frightened than ever before. It's a kind of cultural McCarthyism where people are being frightened out of saying what they think. Reach for comment about Berliner's claims. An NPR spokesperson directed Fox News to a memo to the staff by editor-in-chief Edith Chapin, where she said she and her team strongly disagree with veterans' assessment of the quality of NPR's journalism and integrity. It's fine to disagree. That's good. Makes the world go round, doesn't it? Of course it does. However, if you're not practicing fair and balanced journalism, if you are not sticking to the facts and letting the political chips fall where they may, you are not practicing journalism, and you have no journalistic integrity. NPR deserves what it's getting, and I hope it improves. I hope it reads the reality and actually embraces it.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back, but you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
Good morning. This is the Wells Report. It's the 16th day of Tuesday. It's the 16th day of April. It is Tuesday. Okay, whatever. So, let's talk a little bit about a brilliant show that was put together by a guy named Jason Sudeikis, who had a brilliant comedy career and has turned into the production and acting in something he called Ted Lasso. It was an amazing series. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed every episode. In that particular show was a woman named Hannah Waddingham. She is a brilliant actress and singer that spent most of her life on London's West End, which is their version of Broadway. She was the master of ceremonies of the Olivier Awards, an acting award in the name of Laurence Olivier, the brilliant British actor. Video captured by a fan and shared with Fox News showed the Ted Lasso star posing for photographs outside before becoming visibly perturbed by something out of frame. What was that? Well, the audio on this particular video is stultifyingly terrible. However, I'm going to play it for you and then I'll explain it a little bit later on. The thing that I want you to know on this is that it shows Hannah Waddingham, if my computer will just cooperate just a little bit, discussing this perturbing event that kind of drove her sort of nuts. So here is that video. And once again, I apologize for the audio. I didn't shoot it. So take a look.
Oh my God.
Thank you, you too.
The video showed Hannah Waddingham berating a reporter for a question he asked her. What was the question? Well, it was a request for this television star to show him her legs. This is something that she immediately responded to by saying, "You'd never ask that of a man." Well, no, that member of the press wouldn't. This entire event gives me an opportunity to invoke John David Mann School. I've noticed over the years the degradation of men into males, and males being castigated as useless to society and indeed a genuine threat to it. I have decided that that's simply preposterous, if not mean-spiritedly and stupid, because you absolutely need to remember the Orwell quote, "We owe our freedoms and liberties to rough men who do their work in the dark." That is the very definition of toxic masculinity, and it's trying to be stomped out. Now, a lot of the wounds that men suffer in the world, not just in the United States, are self-inflicted. In this particular case, the wound we all suffer from is some idiot asking to see Hannah Waddingham's legs. The John David Mann School lesson of the day: if a woman wants you to see her legs, she will show them to you. You can imagine the permutations from this. Requesting any of those activities of a woman is ridiculously rude. Don't do it. Don't do it. Self-imagined Don Juans, who proposition females in various locations, sometimes find success. But what they find usually is scorn, derision, maybe even a good quick slap across the face, which, by the way, in the arsenal of females around the world is something that has fallen out of favor for some reason, but sure can be useful. Again, slap across the face is a pretty good idea in some cases, as long as there are other men around to stop a malfunctioning male from trying to hit you back. I assure you, if I'm in that position, that's what will happen. But let's move on. Men, you don't get to proposition females. You don't get to ask them to show you anything. If they choose to, being as their imagery belongs to them, well, you need to look at that as a gift, not as some salacious opportunity to see somebody else's anatomy. Now, that goes with anything else. Be genuine. Be polite. Be respectful. Keep your hands in your pockets and mind your manners. If she is interested in anything that would cause you to take your hands out of your pockets, she'll tell you. Until she does, keep your hands warm. She may change her mind. And cold hands. That's for another lesson. This has been the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for joining us. Our telephone number 817-379-2172. Again, if you find value in this broadcast, subscribe to it. Share it with your friends. Ask them to subscribe. Hit the notification button so you know when we're on the air. And by all means, if you'd like to support the show financially, go to patreon.com/The Wells Report and give us a couple of bucks a month. Until tomorrow, God bless you. See you later. And there we go. Let's see here. What's going on in our chat room? I have been, when we were talking a little bit about gender surgery, Yvonne said, first do no harm, which is the ethical pledge of doctors and surgeons. Let's see what else happened. Poker Monkey. Red Storm Rising actually came out in 1986. I said it was like 20 years ago. Well, it's more like 40 years ago. Time flies when you're on the brink of nuclear war. Yeah, that's the way it goes. Let's see. We were talking a little bit about the knife attacks in Australia. Yvonne said, I think she thinks about the almost terrorist attack here in Texas. A couple of people went to a ridiculous public ceremony where people were learning how to draw cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. People in Arizona, Muslims in Arizona, terrorists. I'm not equating the two, Muslims and terrorists. I'm just saying that I should have said Muslim terrorists. Saw that and said they were going to do something about it. So they loaded up their car with semi-automatic weapons and drove to Texas. They got those weapons out of the trunk in front of the event and decided what they were going to do was go into this event and shoot everybody up. One police officer, armed with a .357 Magnum revolver, took them both out with 2 shots. That's what happens in Texas. If it hadn't been for the officer, somebody else would have done something. Indeed, I say that if somebody decides to haul out a weapon and start shooting people randomly, indiscriminately, he's probably going to get shot about 10, 15 times from people at 3 different angles in 4 different calibers. And so that's something that consequently, we don't have a lot of those things happening. But when you render the populace completely defenseless, well, things like that happen. Let's see. I don't know how you turn off autofill by Facebook, Yvonne. I can not help you with that. Let's see. Talking about the Trump trial, the judge is biased and needs to be removed. Who is his boss? Well, it's that enclave of judges that rule on the ethics of other judges. They are all from New York, and many of them, if not all of them, are appointed. And so there is no accountability by the people. Let's see. That was Gary. Ann says, keeping Trump from attending his son's graduation. That's what I said or wanted to say, that at some point, negative campaigning, and in this particular case, lawfare, becomes mean. And it is rejected universally by the voters of both parties. Both parties. Harrison Schmitt was a man who walked on the moon. He was elected to Congress in Arizona, and he decided to take a negative take on his opponent. He kept pounding away on his congressional opponent until the voters of Arizona said, this guy is a nut. And they voted him out of office in favor of the opponent he was attacking. We don't have to go very far. The current lieutenant governor of the state of Texas. Hang on a second here. Let me do this real fast. Dan Patrick. Dan Patrick is now the current lieutenant governor. He ran against David Dewhurst, who decided to go negative against Dan Patrick. And Dan Patrick rose above it all and simply said, that's not the issue here. And David Dewhurst, who was the sitting lieutenant governor, was set aside because of his negative campaigning. It was too bad. David Dewhurst was not a terrible man, but he certainly looked terrible when he decided that that indeed he would go negative with Dan Patrick. Let's see. We were talking about. Let's see. That's not what I want. That's not what. Oh, Gary Abshire says the YouTube censorship is the worst. Well, in the case of the Wells Report, not so much. There were a couple of times when I was suspended from YouTube, basically for reporting the news. And when I pointed it out to them, they lifted the suspension. You see, a lot of people criticize this broadcast because I use news copy from other organizations. You should be doing this yourself, they say. You're violating copyright laws, they say. Well, I'm not interested in violating any copyright laws or stealing from anybody for any reason. But what I do is I report the news as you see it. So I go to those outlets and I do share that information. When I have the capacity to pay for my own news services, I will do so. I'm not anywhere close. Because you can't just buy one. You got to buy the Associated Press. You got to buy Metro News. You got to buy a bunch of them, and they're expensive. But that is your own news, even though it's developed by somebody else. You can say that it's your news. As soon as I can do that, I will. But I also believe that you need to have somebody interpreting the propaganda, especially in this age, interpreting the propaganda that is foisted on you by this mainstream media. When I pointed that out to YouTube, they said, "Oh yeah, you're right. You're not saying this yourself. You're reporting what something that USA Today reported or the New York Times or something like that." And they lifted the suspensions. There was one suspension on YouTube that I deserved. I played a copywritten 60 Minutes episode on the border of Texas because I thought it was important. And YouTube hammered me. They should have. As a matter of fact, I wrote to them saying that was absolutely just. I won't do it in the future. So there you go. Let's see. Yvonne, we were talking a little bit about the destruction of men in the United States by virtue of first rendering them as idiots on every possible public conveyance of information, and then actually resorting to unnecessary, unneeded, and indeed destructive surgery against those kids. She said, first, do no harm. And then what she said was, we need men. We have too many boys. Yes, we do. Yeah. And men have, well, for reasons of politics and other things, have stopped raising their sons. It's not fashionable to raise a tough kid. My son, Colton, is real tough. Is he a bully? No. But he's tough. He has lines. You cross those lines, you're in trouble. He waits for somebody to cross the lines. He's like his father. You can't get into a fight with me because I reach out and punch you in the nose. You can get in a fight with me if you reach out and punch me in the nose. I will disassemble you. And Colton adopted that from me. Fathers matter. Men matter. The nonstop din of trying to turn men into something else is ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. Let's see what else. We can only guess there's still boys these days, says Gary. Yes, indeed. Let's get down to the bottom of this. By the way, we have not had a terror attack in Texas since that police officer shot down those Palestinian terrorists. It's true. By the way, Gary says news and facts are not copywritten. Come on, YouTube. Well, in the case of these 60-minute reports, they are copywritten. And they should be. They are brilliant pieces of journalism. I knew that I was very likely going to get in trouble for doing what I did, which was to play that report in full, because it involved the state of Texas and it involved the border, which involves the entire United States of America. It was an editorial decision I made. I paid for it. Unfortunately, so did people who watch on YouTube. They also paid for it. But I've gotten nothing but just treatment from YouTube. Facebook has famously canceled a lot of people, especially during the run-up to the 2020 election, and even before that. I've spent a little bit of time in Facebook jail, but once again, it was over a misunderstanding, not misconduct. And so Facebook, YouTube, X is brilliant. X, I don't have a deal with X. I wish I did. But X carries this broadcast. Twitch carries this broadcast. That's audio only. And Rumble and Patreon. They carry this broadcast. And they do so without charging me a dime. I happen to believe, and still believe, this is an important broadcast of news. I will continue doing it until I can't do it any longer. And until then, well, then I'll just keep doing the work. And yes, news and facts are not copywritten. Well, some news is. I mean, when somebody has an exclusive report, you have to say, this is an exclusive report. You'll note that when I find one of those, I don't give you the entire story. I invite you to go see it for yourself. And it's essential. Let's see. Oh, by the way, Gary Abshire said, the only way Democrats can win is to cheat. Facebook put me in jail for 30 days in 2020. Yeah, that's true. That's because they hadn't been given the religion of free speech in these United States. They're better, not perfect. Sooner or later, they'll get to be perfect, hopefully, and they'll realize that they, like broadcasters before them, operate in the public interest as a public trustee. At least it's my sincere hope that they do. All right, so that's all I've got today. I want to thank you very much for being a part of our broadcast, and I will see you again tomorrow. And remember, there will be some programming notes, and we'll give you those a little bit later on. That's what we call in the industry a tease. But until tomorrow morning, take good care of yourself, and I will see you